proactively, we work to show kindness to others. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. Say that with me. Love does not envy or boast. Love does not envy or boast. Now put it all together. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. Okay, some of you are like, love, boast. So, okay, just keep working, okay? And if it makes you feel any better, I totally messed up in the 9 o'clock worship gathering at one point and drew a blank, and so many people rejoiced in my wrongdoing. It was really frustrating. So, anyway, one more time, all right? Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. So, envy. Are you envious of what others have? Are you prone to compare yourself with others? Always thinking this person, that person, they've got it all figured out. I wish I had what they have. I wish I was where they are. Or maybe even, I wish they didn't have what they have. Envy, jealousy, this is no minor offense. Remember, it was Eve's envy of God, wanting what he has, to know what he knows, that brought sin into the world in Genesis 3. Immediately on the heels of that, it was Cain's envy that led to the murder of Abel. Not long after that, it was envy that led Joseph's brothers to sell him into slavery. Proverbs 27:4, talking about jealousy, says, wrath is fierce and anger is a flood, but who can stand before jealousy? Likewise, James 3:14-16, if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, this is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. Without question, envy can be one of the hardest battles that we fight in the Christian life and in Christian community, because there's always someone who has something we don't. There's always someone who's better at this or that than we are. Consider ways that you are prone to envy what others have. Love does not envy or boast. So do you boast about what you have? In a sense, this is the opposite of jealousy, because this is, in essence, wanting to make others jealous of what we have. And it leads right in the next description of love. It is not arrogant or rude. Say that with me. It is not arrogant or rude. One more time. It is not arrogant or rude. So let's try to put all this together, okay? Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. All right, you're doing great. All right, one more time. You ready? Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. So are you arrogant before others? It's interesting. The word for boasting, right before this, literally means to be a braggart or be a windbag. And then the word for arrogant is to be puffed up about ourselves. And sometimes that's overt in our lives and others' lives. Sometimes we may walk away from a conversation thinking, man, I talked a lot about myself. Or we may walk away from a conversation thinking, man, they talked a lot about themselves. But this can oftentimes be much more subtle in our lives. Because we all like to be made much of, to be admired. We like when people notice our successes. And we like when people miss our failures. So we are, in subtle ways, constantly working to minimize our failures and maximize our successes in others' eyes. We subtly turn conversations in ways that make us look better, in ways that draw attention to good things about us and cover over bad things about us. And the reality is, at the core, we all have a pretty deep concern for ourselves in the sight of others. Are you arrogant, even in subtle ways, before others? Are you rude to others? Saying things that are inconsiderate of others, doing things that will offend others. To the point here at Corinth, simply because you have the right to do something, they were doing it. regardless of the effect of that of people around them. I'm going to eat whatever food I want to, 1 Corinthians 8 through 10, because I've got a right to do this, disregarding the effect on others around them. Well, I've got a right to not wear a head covering over my head when I pray, regardless of how that is affecting others. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Just because somebody else doesn't like it doesn't mean I can't do it. I've got a right to do it. To be rude is to disregard what others, how something might affect others with what we say, how we act. It's the very opposite of kindness, which is continually regarding others with what we say or do. This is not giving consideration to how what we say or do will affect the people around us. 1 Corinthians 13 says, love is not offensive. It's not rude. So, we review. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. Now the next part. It does not insist on its own way. Say that with me. It does not insist on its own way. One more time. It does not insist on its own way. And then you keep going. Let's just keep going here to what Paul says next. It is not irritable or resentful. So say that with me. It is not irritable or resentful. It is not irritable or resentful. Now I want you to put those two together. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. You ready? It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. So, do you want things your own way? And are you irritable when things don't go your way? This was the climax of Paul's argument in 1 Corinthians chapter 8 through 10, when he came to the end of chapter 10 and he said, I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. I'm living for the sake of others, not seeking my own way. I'm seeking what's best for them. This is love, not seeking my own way and not being irritated when things don't go my way. Let's be honest, this is hard, isn't it? This is not natural. One preacher said, by nature, none of us likes to be interrupted when things are going well. We do not like delays in our plans. We all have a strong craving for a trouble-free life, and we tend to get irritated when our best-laid plans go awry. We don't like traffic tie-ups on the freeway when we have an appointment. Yeah, I could just pause there. We don't love construction on Highway 280. It doesn't necessarily bring out the best in us. We don't like overheated cars on vacation. We don't like for babies to cry all night long. We don't like checks to get lost in the mail. We like it when life flows according to plan and pleasure. And when it doesn't, our nature is provoked to complain and grumble and murmur, to be angry and critical. And so, is there evidence of that in our lives? Small ways, big ways? Don't miss this. Any sign of a temper is a signal of a lack of love. Any fits of anger, outbursts of anger, are uncovering roots of pride where self, which we've placed at such a high level, has been offended. Now, the Bible's not talking here about a righteous anger that hates sin in the way God hates sin and is set against sin. No, the Bible's talking here about our reaction when our plans are interrupted or our feelings are offended, and we react in irritation and frustration that shows this priority we've placed on ourselves and betrays the patience that God has called us to have with others. Are you irritable? Does it take just something small to get for that anger, that emotion, that lack of love in any way to rise up in you? Is there evidence of anger in your heart toward others, temper with others? Another preacher said, you may say it's no big deal when you lose your temper because it's all over in a few minutes. But the preacher went on to point out, so is a nuclear bomb. And if we're not careful, this irritability easily leads to resentment. It is not irritable or resentful. Do you keep any record of others' wrongs? Though the imagery here is to keep a book on evil, to keep tabs on those who have wronged you. And the Bible says love does not keep an account of offenses, always ready to bring them up to build a case against someone. But we are all prone to do it. This kind of resentment that breeds unforgiveness and builds bitterness within our hearts, that's not only hurtful toward others, but is harmful for ourselves. It's been said that harboring bitterness in your heart is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. It kills your soul. Love is not resentful. So, we're halfway through these verses, and the first half is much harder than the second half. So, you think you got them? Let's try them from the start. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. All right. Now keep going with me. Verse 6. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Say that with me. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. All right, I'm starting to lose some of you. Come on. Stay with me. Here we go. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. So do you find any pleasure when others do wrong? Do you rejoice in any way over wrongdoing? No, I'm guessing that if we were just to hear that and immediately respond to it, almost all of us would immediately say, of course I don't rejoice over wrongdoing. But I want you to think about someone who has deeply hurt you. Or maybe even someone who you have deep disagreement with. Maybe it's somebody you know well. Maybe it's a public figure you don't know at all. So anybody from a close friend, someone in your home, coworker, to the President of the United States. You think about someone with whom you disagree or who has offended you in some way, and you find out news that that person has failed in some way or fallen in some way. Is there any part of you that an immediate reaction to that thinks, serves them right? For that's not love. It's not love at all. Are you prone to any kind of pleasure when another person falls? Is any part of you glad? And even you might think, I'd be glad if evil befell that person. Or, there's another subtle way. Are you eager to pass on news of evil in others to other people? Meaning gossip. The sick tendency to share unfavorable facts or falsehoods about other people, literally gloating over their sins and shortcomings, all the while disguising it as self-righteous concern. Deadly in the church. Gossip, spreading news of evil, rejoicing over it in the process. Not, hey, this is happy news, but there's an enjoyment that's coming in making this news known to someone else. That it's not loving at all. Love does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. So do you experience only delight when others do right? Now see how all these are tied together. So when you envy someone, you rejoice when that person loses something or something goes wrong. It makes you feel better. Yet if something goes right, maybe that person who has something that you wish you had and they get more of it, they grow in that grace or whatever it might be, and you find yourself becoming all the more envious, not rejoicing in right and in that which is good and right and true. See the web here. Patience with others, kindness toward others leads to rejoicing in righteousness and truth in others. Do you experience only delight, not envy, not resentment when others do right? Love does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Okay, let's say it all together. We're almost to the end here, okay? Here we go. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. All right. 4 final phrases. They're easy, just kind of repeat them one after another, okay? So, love bears all things. Love bears all things. Believes all things. Believes all things. Hopes all things. Endures all things. Okay, just remember, be he, okay? Bears, believes, he, all right? And then hopes, endures. So be he, for what it's worth, okay? So just think, be he in your mind, okay? So let's say it all together. You ready? Oh, that last phrase. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. He helped you, didn't it? You were thinking it. Yeah. So do you tire of support for others? Love bears all things. It goes back to the patience this whole passage started with. Love bears with others. It protects, provides for, cares for them, feels pain with them, and perseveres with them. In the middle of trial and tribulation, it bears with them. Even when it's not easy. And patience, love bears all things. It never tires of support for others. Do you hold on to faith for others? There are days for all of us when faith is hard to come by. Right? And we need people in our lives to have faith for us when faith is hard. We need people who will love us enough to stand in the gap in those moments, believing in, trusting in God's grace, in us, holding on to faith for us. Love believes all things. It holds on to faith for others. Do you lose hope for others? You know, you hear some of these phrases and you can't help but to think back to 1 Corinthians chapter 5 where Paul commanded the church to actually remove a brother from the church in church discipline because of unrepentant sin. And you might think back to that and hear this and think, well, what's loving about that? Like, isn't that giving up on someone? But then you remember the reasoning behind church discipline that removes a brother or sister from the church in unrepentant sin. Why do we do that? 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 5, the Bible says, deliver that man over to Satan for the destruction of the flesh so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. In other words, do church discipline, even the step of removing a member from the church in hope that that man will be saved, that he'll see the end of his sin and himself, and he'll come back to Christ. This is why we do the difficult work of gently, humbly confronting one another in sin. We do it out of hope for others.